familiar with the term opioids?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, what do you know or what have you heard about opioids? Either one of you.
So what I've heard is that there's a bunch of different types of opioids.
Okay.
Are we talking specifically just heroin or just opioids?
Well, I'd like to hear, what have you heard? We're going to narrow some things down as we go through the group. I'd just love to hear initially, what do you know or what have you heard about opioids?
They're like prescription drugs. They're prescribed. Usually, I've heard like patients, or not patients, but clients talk about how they were in the army and they got prescribed a lot of them when they were hurt, or people that their parents use a lot of opioids, or when they go to the doctor and they have like back pain or like some type of injury, they get prescribed opioids, like prescription opioids. But then a lot of them end up using heroin once they're cut off.
Okay. So you heard a lot about them being prescription based, and then they move to other access points to get that. Okay, great. What about you?
Pretty much the same thing. You know, the first thing that pops into mind when you mention the word opioids is prescription painkillers.
Immediate, okay.
Right? And then the other part of it is the street form of opioid, which is heroin. Right? So.
Great. Now, what words might you associate with opioids? What words do you associate with them?
Pain medicine, medication. Yeah. Aside from this meeting, what's in the media a lot is the opioid epidemic, right? Specifically heroin and the overdoses. So that's usually the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word opioid.
Right. So I want to hear what first comes to mind when you hear those terms.
Same thing.
Okay. Now, the two of you have already mentioned the term heroin. So I don't have to ask you if you're familiar with it, but what do you know or what have you heard about heroin?
So heroin is a street drug. Mm-hmm. It comes from it's a plant, something in like Vietnam or someplace over in Italy somewhere. But anyway, it's a street drug that's cut because no one uses pure tar heroin. It's cut with whatever.
Okay, when you use the term cut, what are you referring to?
Diluted with another substance.
Okay. I wanted to ask two things. Do you think people who are, and this is not in the guide at this point, but do you think people who are using heroin, for example, use the term cut or diluted?
Cut.
Okay, just check.
Right, so I'm using terms that I was taught.
That's perfect.
Street
term. I just want to make sure we get an appreciation for the language that's being used.
Right.
Okay. So that's what about you when you think about what do you know or have you heard about heroin?
Basically the same thing. Clients also come in and talk about it a lot, specifically when there's something new in the market. So like 2 summers ago, maybe 3, a lot of people started talking about fentanyl, how they needed to be careful and stuff like that. And we saw a big intake in Narcan prescriptions.
Yeah.
But then also there's like a generational gap. So like you have like the 20-something, 30-something coming in and just like talking about, like this heroin is blue and this one's pink and like gives you different effects. So like my dealer just gives me this for free and tells me to try it out. But then you have the older generation that are like, they're crazy, like we don't use that because it's different color. Like we just try to stick to like this specific color or dealer.
When you use the term older generation, what age ranges are you thinking?
So 40 and
late 40s.
Late 40s, yeah.
Okay. Another distinction with the generation is we have more of the younger clients that are more receptive with receiving Narcan than the older. If I could use this description, the older clients are the experts. It's you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They don't think that they would be the one to overdose on heroin. Right. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they usually buy from the same person, the same cut, right? Some of the times, but a lot of the times when the older actually have an episode where there's an overdose. It could be various reasons. A lot of times because they bought from that same person that perhaps got their supply with the cut of the fentanyl, right? Or it's cut with something else where there's a higher potency of the heroin and not of the cut.
It's interesting as you're sharing the story, and I like to always perhaps help in my understanding and reporting, as well as when we think about how do we communicate it. Right now I'm in the process of dealing with a gluten-free child, and bakeries that have a shared oven will not provide any gluten products. Their gluten products are only in the freezer section because they can't guarantee that cut of what they're using, that flour, is in those other products. So much like this 40-year-old generation, they don't really, they may not know what's being used, or if there's one episodic period. That's interesting. That's an interesting opportunity when we talk about how to communicate that message to them, because there are some things they may not be aware of, because they practice for so long, they become an expert, like us in our fields. But you go get trained. You get updated on things, and so maybe this is a way to speak right into it. So that wasn't on the guide in that way, but I was just listening and heard that. So thank you for that. And we'll come back to a little bit more about the aptitude for and openness to using Narcan, as well as the colors that you spoke of, because I think that'll be important when we're doing any type of marketing. Well, why do you think people use heroin? Why do you think they use?
Okay. There are different reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Reasons.
Okay.
Like the ones I've heard was I was in the army and then got pumped up with painkillers and then got better and got cut off. Another one was in a car accident, painkillers, hurt my back, painkillers. And then there's a few clients that are their parents use, so then they're just around it, so then they use.
Could be a genetic predisposition in that manner, and then environment may be another factor. But some of the reasons I've heard is simply I like the way it feels, makes me feel.
Yeah.
Right?
So pleasure or recreation.
Yeah.
Is that a fair? Is the term recreational fair when you say that for pleasure, the way it makes you feel? Is that a fair term to use? Recreational purposes. You hear that a lot, but I just want to make sure as we're looking at terminology, you say I like the way it makes me feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Would people, when they say that, is the connotation or the use of recreational being tied to that offensive at all? I mean, or is it really about something else?
Let me address that by saying this is what I was told by someone who taught me because I took training when it came to substance abuse. And the gentleman told me, he told us at the beginning of the class, he said, people use drugs for two reasons: to get a feeling and to get rid of a feeling, right? When you feel bad, you want to feel better. So you're going to do whatever it takes to feel better a lot of times. And doing the drug of choice, makes you feel better if it's for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or for days. You just want to feel better.
Okay.
Right? So without going into too many logistics, there's a thing that we involve ourselves here at Bedford the City. It's this concept called trauma-informed care. Right? So basically what that means is that there is some sort of sensible event that an individual endured as a young adult or as a young child or as a young adult that has a direct reflection on their behavior today.
Absolutely.
So we can't visit a discussion like that without mentioning recreational use of drugs.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure as we think about the campaign and the information, the awareness, that we are cognizant of everything that goes into the word choices we're using. Because it wants to be beneficial and not offensive.
Right.
Okay. That would be my thought. Why do you think people? And so you share with me why you think people are using heroin, but why do you think people continue to use? And why do they continue to use? And this can get deeper, but on the surface, and then maybe a little bit deeper. Why do they continue to use?
You want to answer that question?
Sure. Easy point is just stressors. So one, it becomes an addictive drug, so they're addicted, their chemistry changes. But in order to like get better or like come off of that, they end up getting sick. And so then they don't like that feeling of being sick. And a lot of patients talk about quitting, but their fear is the whole getting sick part. But then, I don't know.
Right. So to piggyback on what he was saying, so if you understand the disease of addiction, right? When you want to quit, but you can't on your own, right? And so that keeps you there. In terms of the heroin addiction, the symptoms from the withdrawals, working in corrections and working in detox and substance abuse in the past, the heroin is a terrible drug when in terms of withdrawal. So a lot of our clients, younger clients, they say they want to quit, but they only use called a maintenance use just to keep from getting sick, right? Because without pointing any fingers, you get to the point where you say you want to get some help. You call a number to an agency, and the agency has walk-in hours, or hey, our walk-in hours are over. Can you come tomorrow or the next day? That's a missed opportunity. That window there is a missed opportunity, right? Because you know what? Who knows that at that moment the individual is wanting to take the next step or the necessary step in order to address their addiction. But when you close that door and that window of opportunity, what could happen next? You know, tomorrow's a different day. You know, it's a missed opportunity.
While we're here, we may not have the opportunity in the additional groups we're going to have because of the size. And I'm going to use this, if it's okay, as kind of some discovery. It's not necessarily on my guide, but what I would like to understand, and I think it might be beneficial to get here, what that withdrawal process is like. Because as we're going to be communicating about overdose and if you're not aware yet, I don't know how much reach, but share with us. You mentioned that the symptoms of withdrawal with heroin are so intense that individuals would rather do a maintenance program or stay on it. And if we're creating, it's an overall campaign, but if we need to understand, just share with me perhaps an example of what that symptom is or why that hesitance.
Right. So when in terms of a maintenance,
from both of you,
in terms of a maintenance program, I wasn't specifically referring to a methadone or Suboxone program.
Okay.
A maintenance program meaning they continue to
use heroin. Yeah.
Just enough.
That's just like my cup of coffee. Right. Instead of two.
Right. So what is it like? Body aches, sweating, irritability, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. I hate the world. I hate everybody. I hate these four walls.
It's like psychological then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's okay. I want to make sure we're
physical. The withdrawal from heroin is physical.
Yeah.
So physical.
So it's like a very intense rotavirus infection or like a viral infection.
So it's almost like a viral infection.
Yeah.
It's
because it's like your whole body's just like freaking out and like.
Yeah. I've seen people at their worst. Fatigue.
Like sweats, shaking.
Yeah.
How long is that process, would you say?
Normally anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Okay. But it's at its peak the first, second, and third day. And around the fourth, fifth day, it's still there. It's still there. You're coming down, right? And so without help, it's terrible.
Anything else you want to add to that? Because while we were there, I just wanted, as you were sharing that story, you talked about those symptoms of withdrawal. And we know symptoms of withdrawal across all types of things you become addicted to. But I just want to make sure we're clear on it because we're going to be addressing issues of overdosing primarily, right? But I think in order to perhaps even craft a better message, it'd be good to know anything. So I just wanted to probe there for a moment while we were there.
It's basically the same thing. That's why people... Like, what are you getting at?
Well, no, I was just right now because you were saying this question came only because you said the symptoms of withdrawal were so severe.
Yeah,
I didn't know what I wanted other than I wanted to make sure we understood what that severity was.
Yeah,
like.
so it's basically what Gerald said. The exact same thing. It's like people, it's like getting a really bad viral infection. Like, I think it's called rotavirus, where it's just like your body's just like basically like giving out, you're throwing up, you're like have diarrhea, like you have like seems like a fever, and like you're just like disoriented, dehydrated, and you just want to get back to normality, but you can't because you're just like so much in pain. And that's like a really big fear for like individuals, and like some of them try to put it on their own because they're like, I can do it, but then it gets to that point where it's just like so bad that like they're like, no, like you can't. But yeah, like going back a little bit to like providing the help when like people do want to quit, it's like a very narrow window because at times when like people like hit rock bottom, and like an example that I like to use is, or not an example, but more of a saying, it's like you can't force an adult to do something they don't want to do because one, they're an adult, and then it's like it's not gonna work. Like if you just like grab somebody and put them in rehab just because they have to, and they're not ready or mentally ready, or just like their environment isn't a good one, they're not going to quit. Like, you're going to put them in rehab, put them through detox, and then just let them out. You're not creating a program for them afterwards. So then they're just going to go back to where they live, see the same friends, get back to the same habits, and just keep going. Instead of like having like, kind of like a purpose of like, okay, this is why I'm quitting, or this is why I want to quit, type of thing. Because like if the problem's still there, they're just going to go back to like step one, and then they're going to end up back like incarcerated or like probation or whatnot.
And I'm going to stay. I'm going to ask a couple sets of series on a couple more things, but I want us to make sure as we are sharing that you feel free, if you return to a section or tell a story that links them all, to go ahead and feel free to do that. Okay, because as we kind of close this section on just heroin, I also want to talk about fentanyl. I want to know, what do you know? And I know you're aware of it because I know who I'm speaking with, right? So I don't have to really ask that question. But how did you, I think it's important, how did you first hear about it? How did you first hear about it? Was it through your job, or were you aware of it prior to coming into doing the role you have now?
So was I aware of fentanyl in terms of its
use
in heroin?
Yes.
I've learned it since I've been working here.
Okay.
Same thing.
Yeah.
I heard of it when like a client came in and she was like, so-and-so was using in the restroom alone, and I've always told him not to use it. Idiot didn't realize, found him dead. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, like trying to be there for her. And she's like, no, he deserved it because he was an idiot. Okay. And I was like, alright. But it's also like, she's been around for a long time, and it's nothing new to her. Like, so she's been around and seen several people die, like her friends or like people she knows die, and it's like a normal thing. Which like, in hindsight, like it shouldn't be a normal thing, but she was just like not for it. So that's when I first heard of it and then clients started coming in and talking about this new thing on the market that was like really good and like.
Okay, and before we jump over, can you give me a time frame? Would you say 24 months ago, 18 months ago?
I want to say it was like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay.
And it was the media.
Say it was
the media.
The media for you? Okay, the media told you?
Yeah, it's the media. And I read articles. I get articles because, you know, fentanyl is a hot topic now, but there's something hotter than fentanyl that's not here yet. It's on its way.
Okay, well, we might get into that. I'm gonna see if I have it on here or not. but basically, so you said about 2 years ago, primarily through the media.
Yeah.
When you think about the users, and this is not exactly on my guide, when you think about the users, how do you think they are finding out? How they found out? Maybe how long ago?
How are they finding out?
Yeah.
The same way people talk about it on the street.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Let me say something about that. Right? We know that there's heroin use.
Right.
We know that there's heroin use that's laced with fentanyl. Right? It was a synergistic effect for a bigger high. Right?
Yeah.
Which places you at a greater possibility of having an overdose. Right? Now, I've talked with users. Mm-hmm. And I can't explain it any better than this, the way this gentleman explained it to me. Okay. Right? He said, man, when you're so far in your addiction and you could see somebody use and overdose and die right in front of you, right? You say to yourself, "Damn, where can I get some of that from?" Right?
And it sounds right. I hear you.
Right?
I hear you.
Some good
shit. I hear you. I hear you. Well, let's be real.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Right? So we can talk about fentanyl laced heroin all we want. They can still get it. It's going to happen.
But you said something really important, I think, as we try to address the issue of overdose. You said there is, when it's a potency, and you're getting closer to that potency, the likelihood for dosing or overdosing is there. That's an important insight to have as you're thinking about messaging. Because it's not just a negative. There's none. I mean, I was actually, I'm talking with you guys in conversation, and so I was just doing some work yesterday, and the conversation with youth is that they're numb to so many things. You know, we were talking about customer service, and they're just, they don't snitch, they don't tell, and they just expect that sometimes they're going to be rude. I see you're nodding your heads with me. So I'm saying that, sharing that to say, it's interesting that you gave me that, because it's important to know that numbness, that numbness aspect, as we communicate a message. I'm not crafting the message, but I want them to know that I'm here to help them see and learn a little bit more about what you're saying. And I heard, hey, ooh, that's some good stuff. Hey, can he die? That's the risk we're taking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I but how do we though communicate what all those risks are? So that, because we still have a job too.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you shared that, because hey, where did I get it at? Interesting. Because you're answering some of the questions in the guide. Because we're asking about the fentanyl laced heroin. What do you know or have you heard about it? And then what words? One thing we didn't say directly is what words might you associate with fentanyl laced heroin?
Potency.
Potency. Potency. Both of you guys said that too so quickly. It's because you're going to go from 0 to 100 potency, or that it's a longer high potency. When you use the word potency, or when the clients are using it, if you think there's a distinction there, I just want to make sure we're communicating that we got the right distinction.
So it's twofold here,
okay,
right? Something you said earlier in this conversation is that they don't know what it's cut with on the street.
Yes.
Right? So let's take from that idea. If they don't know what it's cut with on the street, so when they use it, if they're used to pushing it a certain speed, a certain place, more sort of certain speed, or the amount, remember, the higher the potency, the less you need to get that high, right?
Right. But
if they don't know what's in there, and it's laced with fentanyl, and they're used to pushing it fast, and especially if they're by themselves, or even if with someone, they can still overdose, right? So in terms of getting a high 0 to 100, the more experienced users, I want to use this, not that they can't overdose, but the more experienced users, because I engage in conversation with them, and I teach them about potency and the amount and other ways that they can overdose, right? So for the more experienced user, they push slow, they get that high really quick, they tend to stop pushing. That's like the right thing to do at that point, right? They got what they want, right? Save the rest for later, maybe, right? But for those individuals that they buy from the same person, for instance, they know that cut, and all of a sudden that cut is different. It's more potent. Let's talk about the fentanyl now. And they're used to pushing it or using the same amount that's more than usual, or the same amount, but it's just laced with the fentanyl. That can cause the overdose, right? So it's really hard to really say. The only time that the conversation changes is when the potency and the amount changes from individual to individual, right? And let's be honest, if I'm going from heroin and I know this guy or this woman sells, right? I'm gonna take a chance and buy it because I can't get to my regular, right? I'm gonna take it, you know. Or if I got a buddy that has some, he got it from somebody somewhere else, houses, it's in the district, right? You just want to get that. You want to get that monkey off your back, right?
And for like a while, like the longest time, like DC was known for having really weak heroin. So like if you wanted good stuff, you would go to Baltimore or New York and then bring it back or use it or whatnot. Until like the whole fentanyl thing started rolling, and then a lot of people started like, oh, okay, like now you gotta be careful. Like we need more Narcan, blah blah blah.
And I'm coming down to that. I want to ask the question while we're here too. It's not on the guide, and I'm not sure if I'll answer it in every question in every group. But I just feel I'm curious as to messaging, because a part of all this work is to help in messaging. Would it be offensive to directly address that? Address the issues of pace and insertion and making sure you don't talk to the wrong dealer. I don't know what'll get approved. I mean, is it, I'm just listening because those are, what you're sharing with me is I'm listening, and these are all the points at which the likelihood of overdosing could occur. You switch your dealer. The potency of what you're using is different, and the pace, you usually use an X amount. It's all, these are those points, the points of transition or those decisions, is it, so if I'm creating a message, and I'm just talking, we can worry about what the client would say, but how would people react to something like this? It's just a brainstorm. I'm just asking.
Yeah, they're gonna say, "Man, you don't know what the hell you're talking about."
Okay,
right? Listen to me. I'm the user right now. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get that monkey off my back. Mm-hmm. If I'm gonna buy from Luis, you think I'm gonna test the potency of it? No, it's that switch. It's that switch off on the street. Quick. They don't look at what they get. That's what they get and go, and they go get that.
There's no return.
And what there's no return on this, right? You don't get a refund.
Right.
What drug dealer will give you a refund on his dope?
Right.
You get what you get. Come on, man. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to test the potency. I'm trying to get the monkey off my back. Now, it may take the edge off. It may not. That's 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever the money is, it's gone. That's down the drain. I'm going to cuss him out. I may not go back to him, right? Next time I see him, I'll curse him out.
Right.
That's about it. Not unless he's one of those guys that come down on your head. You just leave him alone.
Right. And that exists.
Yeah. You better believe it exists.
It's real. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask about it, just to get a feel, just get the feedback.
Yeah. I mean, it also depends on the demographic. Because like I said, like younger people tend to be a little bit more careful and more cautious than like the older experience.
Right, generationally. I mean, I'm really getting from both of you, there's some generational issues, and there's some issues like any of us. If you have your dealer versus your non-dealer, or where you're getting your source, where you're sourcing it from, at what time. And we're gonna before I go to Narcan, which is where we're gonna go to. I'd like to ask a little bit about what's the whole issue with colors. I'm not a user. This is interesting to me. I'm not sure if you were aware of any of your reading, and I've kind of done some other work before getting here because, I'm black and, I know some people. And just to get an appreciation, but they didn't talk about this whole color thing. Maybe because it was I'm more mature, so maybe I'm talking to some of the wrong people. I didn't even know who were.
I think it was just more of like, so we were talking like young, clients, and they were saying that like there were just different colors. But now like it was switching, and like there was like different colors, but which means it was cut with different things. And one of the guys was like, yeah, I break out in highs when we use like the blue one. And I was like, well, why not use it anymore? He's like, well, I just use a little, just enough. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard different. I heard of different colors when I used to work at the DC jail. There was an inmate that I didn't know you could snort heroin. That's how I learned you could snort heroin in DC jail. He told me, man, he laughed at me, right? But anyway, the different color, and he told me, I'll never forget it. He said, I said, man, what does heroin look like, right? And I asked a few people that still do sometimes. He said, you looked at me, are you serious? Because that's common to him.
Yeah,
I'm foreign to him.
Right.
Yeah. And he said, man, it depends on the cut. You know what I mean? He said, they got something on the street now. It's a little brown. They call it Obama. they had heroin called Obama. I'm serious, right? All a little brown,
Right.
And basically, it's whatever it's cut with, right? I've had a gentleman come in here and show me pictures of how he had to go to the emergency room because he developed an abscess in his groin area. Come to find out, and I guess he asked the person he bought it from, the heroin that he bought was cut with meat tenderizer, right?
Yeah.
So it's whatever.
Black pictures and it's just like this huge like
and so
gas.
the purpose of cutting, from my understanding, is for two reasons. You can't shoot black tar heroin, pure heroin. That's just
Right.
too potent. So to reduce the potency, you cut it with something, you bulk it up and sell more of it,
Yeah.
right? And whatever you bulk it up with, it could be baking soda, it could be whatever it is.
So messaging, I'm sorry, I'm just always here because, messaging that's directed toward the cut.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. That would be radical. But, it'd be radical. And I'm just thinking, as you were talking to me, I'm like, okay, DC police and Washington Hospital and a group of these people, and we are proven, and the health services saying, is that's just something there. I was just listening. I'm like, okay, where are some of these things? Where are these? As you heard me each time, I'm like, where is it happening? Because